Hi, so this is HackerRank, the platform that Pico uses to conduct most of its contests. If you're not registered already, register through signing up. If not, log in for developers and you'll be redirected to the HackerRank homepage. So you'll be provided a link of the contest. You can just directly copy paste here or just type the slug itself. In this case, it's a big brain moment. So you'll be redirected to the contest page. So generally the link that you get will be before the contest starts. So there'll be a countdown timer that's going on. Once it hits 0, you'll be redirected to the page where you'll be able to see all the questions. These admin options won't be available to you, obviously. It's only to the administrators of the contest. Beyond that, you'll be having the current leaderboard. You can compare your progress, you can review all your submissions, and in general, all your questions will be displayed here. If you click on a question, you'll be redirected to the question. You'll see the question statement itself, the input, constraints, output format, sample input and output, the editor itself, and here you can change whatever language you're comfortable with. If you just go back, you can view all the different questions. There's no particular order that you have to solve in. You can also see the submissions here, previous submissions. Generally the questions go from easy to hard, top to bottom, and you can just pick whatever order you want to solve it. Yep. Let's just go ahead and start solving question number 1. So just go to the question itself. Here we given the description of the question, which in general gives you a pretty good idea of what the question is about and gives you a good idea about the context of the question, right? So in the mystical Arabesque, there's a secret treasure hidden by a magical gate. Unlock this gate, you must decipher the code hidden within a string of numbers and characters. You're given a string consisting of a single character. Yeah, so this is where the important stuff is, right? Okay, you're given a string consisting of a single character followed by a single integer separated by a space. Your task is to determine whether the ASCII value of the character is equal to the integer. If they are equal, print yes, otherwise print no. Cool. Here we given the input format, which basically tells you what and how exactly are you getting the input. If you see, you can directly see the sample input and output and get a pretty good general idea of what the question is giving you and what is the expected output. Here you can see ASCII value of A is 65, so it's a yes. ASCII value of 1 is not 97, so it's a no. One thing you have to keep in mind is the character, it is case sensitive, right? So if you write IES in small, it's not going to accept, it's very case sensitive, because it's a direct one-to-one comparison that's going on behind the scenes, right? So if you look at the input again, so you get a single line consisting of a character which is of single length. So if you see mod C here, it basically represents a character, the length of the character, which is 1. So you get a single character, you won't be getting something like A or Z. Followed by a single integer, which is between that 0 to 127. Cool. And given the constraints here, so constraints basically give you a good idea about what the range of values that you can be expecting for a particular variable or a particular type, right? Beyond that, constraints also help you, if you don't completely get the idea of a question, advanced questions as such, it gives you a pretty good idea of what the expectation of the questionnaire is. Depending on the range, what is the complexity of the answer that they're expecting, you can decipher this. Okay, probably beyond the scope of this video, we'll cover this topic in another video if possible. Coming back to this, so output will be a single line consisting of yes if it's a match, otherwise it's a no. So let's just start with the code. So let's just switch over to Python 3 here, and yeah, you can see the input here, right? So you can just assume it being something like that's typed in a terminal when you're executing a regular code in a lab, right? So A space 65, then enter. So how do you accept input like this? So you can just have a character and an integer. Just writing here input, and then you're gonna split it, right? So split is the first half goes to C, the second half goes to N, and then obviously the C and N still holds the string values, correct? So let's just typecast it to an actual integer. And then let's just call the odd function character, which basically gives you the ASCII value. Even though Python typically Unicode, then ASCII is backwards compatible with Unicode. So let's just try this. If it's true, just to print yes. If not, no. Let's just run this code. So when you actually run the code, your code is tested against our sample inputs here, just 2 of them. And if you feel the code is right, no errors as such, you can just submit the code here. When you submit the code, it is actually tested against our hidden test cases. Yeah, all our test cases, the code works for all our test cases, and you get a complete score. So let's just go back, and you see, code is actually missing. So what do you do in this case? Chill out, go to submissions, view results. You can see the code here. Open in editor, scroll down, and you can see your code here. Let's just, for the sake of experimentation, change the value, right? And just try running the code. So you can see it didn't pass one of our test cases as expected. And if you just submit the code, just see, right, what happens. So interesting. So it worked for some of our test cases and obviously didn't for others. And you can see the score is actually 0 here. So in terms of grading, you basically have binary, like, either if all the test cases are accepted, only then you get a complete score, else you don't, or partial. If few of the test cases are accepted, you get a partial score. And obviously in this case, we are only given binary scoring system because you can just print yes or no and like get partial marks for it. And yeah, that's it. So remember I told you you're accepting a string here, right? So what if I actually accept it just as a string, like just using input, and then what is the thought process? How do you extract the values out of it without using split? What do you think about? If you know the answer, put it in the comment box below, and let's just move on to the next question. Moving on to the next question, array what? So array what is a very simple, just print the sum of array elements given. Even though the question is very simple, it will give you a good foundational understanding of whatever the basics are required to solve almost all kind of problems, like almost, I'm saying, not data structures related, but basic mathematical algorithmic formula based questions. So if you just see, you'll be getting a bunch of integers. First line contains an integer n denoting the size of the array, and second line contains an n-spaced integer representing the array's elements. So you get the size of the array, which is 6, and then you get the 6 elements. You basically have to return, or in this case print, the sum of all the elements. And if you see the constraints, you see that n is up to 1000, and each element a of I, that is, also the range is up to 1000. You can just use an integer data type here and just print the sum. And so let's just get coding. So solving in Python, we'll take in the first input using the input method, convert it into an integer, save it in n, and then we'll have a list that contains all the elements. So what could we do for that? First we'll take the input and then split it. So that would return the each individual element in the form of a string, right? So then convert that into basically an integer type of map object. So we can have an integer split, okay. And then convert the map type to a list. So list of print of this, yeah. And then you can just literally do print of sum of the array, and that's it. Works. Cutting it off, and it works. So I'd highly encourage you guys to check out all the different data types Python has and the edge cases, not edge, particular edge cases, but the uses. Okay. And how you can combine each one of them to create an even more complex, more useful data structure. That's it. Let's move on to the next question.
This is the explanation on the vowel counters to problem. You'll be given n strings and you have to print the total number of vowels in all of the strings together. The strings that you're going to get are guaranteed to be having only small letters. They'll not contain any capitals, they'll not contain any special cases like spaces, underscores, dollar, at the rate, hash, nothing of that. And they won't be containing numbers. You have to print the number of vowels that you have as one integer. That's it. You're not supposed to print any extra stuff. Input format. First line will contain the integer n. So if you have 3 strings, the first line will contain the number 3. The next 3 lines, that is line number 2, 3, 4, will contain the strings. That is, the next n lines will contain strings 1 to string n. And any string will only contain small letters. Constraints. These are the limitations of the input we are going to give to your program. You don't have to write the limitations into your program, but you can just build your program around this so it's easier for you. So first limitation that we are going to put for our test cases, not for your programs. You can put as you like for your programs. First limitation, you will have between 1 and 100 strings, that is n strings. N is always between 1 and 100. And then the length of a string that you're going to get, each string is also guaranteed to be between 1 and 100 characters in length. This does not include the null character, so you'll have to handle that separately. Now if you look at the the sample input, you have 1 as the first letter n, so you're going to read one string, home. In home there are 2 vowels, so you have to output 2. In the second sample input, you have 3 as the first line, so there will be 3 total strings that you have to read. The strings are jitter containing 2 vowels, fruit containing 2 vowels, and burglary containing 2 vowels. Total of 6 vowels, so I'll have to output 6. So this is sample code. I have n to store the number of strings I'll have to read, vowel to store the number of vowels I encounter. I first read n, and then I make a loop, go from I to n, and I read n strings. And then I make a loop inside that to go through every character in the string that I've read, string A, and check if it's a vowel. If it's a vowel, I increment it. And then finally, after all of these operations get over, I print the number of vowels. On running, there might be some problems like this. Don't worry if it's a compile message. As long as your code is running, it's generally fine. Times because it takes longer for us to read through the codes. Now this is Python. Python is by far the easiest. So n equals in input, you'll just read the first line, convert to integer. For I in range n, it loops from 0 to n. And I'll store the string as input. If I do input, we'll just store one single line into string. For each in string, we'll separate out characters from the string. If each is A, E, I, O, U, okay, or keyword here instead of or operator. If each equals A, each equals E, each equals I, each equals O, each equals U. In that case, I'll be incrementing the number of vowels I have. Oh wait, I don't have a variable for that. I'll need to add it. So here it should be vowel plus plus, oh wait, not plus, plus equals to 1. And I'll need to create the vowel variable. As of here, vowels is 0 initially. If I run the code, it should work fine. And you can submit. Yeah, it worked.